So welcome back to the next module. We're talking about how to create axis and also manage axis properties. So I want to let you know that creating axis is the first step to modeling. It's quite important. It's a very, very important part of modeling, creating of axis. And if you create an axis, for instance, let's just say you create an axis. You create another axis, for instance. Where this axis intersects is called a node. Where this axis intersects is called a node. And you need these nodes, you need these axes to intersect to create nodes so you can be able to place members. Without these nodes, there are certain members you can't place, like a column. You can't place a column without these nodes. Right? So let's jump straight into learning how to create axis. So for this model, we'll be teaching how to create grids or axes manually. So you come in, you click. First thing, you go to your settings. Come to your protaStructure environment, come to your general. This is where I told you on a previous module that this is for your axis. If you notice, this angle step is 5 degrees, the length step is about 100. So you can change your length step. Let's change it to about 1000. Okay, you press OK. So you click grids. Once you pick grids, you notice there's a drop down menu. This drop down menu just gives you properties of that grid you're about to pick. Just gives you the properties, certain properties, the label and all of that. You can decide to move it to wherever you want to move it. So you can decide to move it to wherever you want to move it. If you move it here and leave it, it's going to pin it at the left side of your windows. If you move it again and place it here, it's going to pin it at the right side of you. So wherever you're comfortable, you can decide to move this and pin it wherever you're comfortable. Right? So I usually just leave it hanging at the right side of my screen. So is the label, is the length, is the angle, is the insertion method. So I will be talking about all the insertion methods. We have the first one here is the single segment axis insertion. The next one is going to be the multi-segment axis insertion, and the next one is going to be the curved axis insertion. We're going to start with the single segment axis insertion. So if you click on anywhere on your screen, and you move your mouse, you notice the length is changing. The length of your mouse is changing. So you can move in a certain direction. Let's just say you move in the X direction horizontally. If you hold your control key, maybe you don't want a curved axis or a grid. You hold your control key and you just drag it. You notice it's going to be straight. It will be moving straight. Right? You can press the F2 button on your keyboard. And that is going to help you input the length of your grid manually. Right, so we can decide that the length of our grid we want to do is about, let's say, 30,000 millimeters. Because remember, when we're checking our units, length on your windows is always in millimeters. So you put 30,000 and you press enter. Then you now pick the point you want. Okay, you notice this is the length on your drop down. This is the length 30,000 and this is the angle 0 degrees. This 0 degrees angle means that it's a straight line. Also, you can decide to create a grid with an angle. You click on a place and you drag it. Same way as I said earlier, you want to edit the length, you press your F2. You can put 30,000 again. So now you want to change the angle of your axis. You press the tab on your keyboard and it changes to where you can input the angle. Let's say we are going to use 10 degrees for this. You press enter and it has been created. Another way of creating axis can be pick a place, you press your F2. If you check below where you're going to create the axis, you're going to see change a delta X. So the delta x you're using is about, let's just say we are using the delta x about 20,000. Put a comma, and you want to change it in the y direction. You want to put it in the y direction. You can also put it, let's just say 1,000. Press enter, and you notice the grid has been created. On the x-axis is about the length, but then on the other, the y-axis is about. So that's how you create a single segment axis insertion, right? So next one is going to be about the multi-segment axis insertion. Multi-segment axis insertion. So if you click here, what this means is that instead of having 2 points, instead of picking just 2 points for your axis, you can decide to pick as many points as you want, depending on how you want the grid to. You can pick a first point, pick a second point, pick a third point, pick a fourth point, pick a fifth point. And once you're done, you just press enter, and your grid has been done. You can also decide to create curved grids. Pick on the grid, the curved axis, pick the first point, pick the second point, and next thing you're going to pick in now is the radius of that your curve. Press your F2 to edit the curve manually, and you type in the radius. Let's just say we are using a radius of 3,000. Press enter, and your curved grid has been generated. Your curved grid has been generated. So we are going to be talking about the properties of this. We have a grid. For instance, we have a grid. If you click on the grid and you right click on it, there are different ways you can edit that grid. You can actually offset the grid axis. Click on offset the axis. If you notice, on top of the axis, if you're offsetting on top of the axis, you notice that L equals to 2116, it's positive. But if you come below, it's going to be negative. So if you are creating a grid, if you are trying to offset that grid to a certain distance above it, do not forget it's going to be positive. So you can press your F2. Just say you want to edit it by 2000. Okay, that's locked. You can press escape. Once you're done, you can press escape. You click on the axis again. You right click on it, offset axis. You bring it down. Notice it's negative now. You can just press your F2 and press minus 2000. So that has been done for the offset. You can also click on the grid, right click it. The next one is you can move the axis. Move it, click on move. If you're moving it upwards, as I said earlier, it's positive. So you can F2, edit it manually. How is the distance? Let's just say you're at 3000. Press enter. The grid has been moved. You can also rotate axis. Just click on the axis, you right click on it. You can rotate your angle depending on where you want to rotate it to. You can decide to stretch your axis. Let's say you want to stretch your axis, you click on stretch. Click on the end you want to stretch. Click here and you drag it. To what length do you want to stretch it to? You want to stretch it about 1000, and the axis has been stretched. You can do same for this other side of it. You click on it, right click on it, stretch, click. You're moving towards the other side again, so you just F2 1000. It has been stretched. You can also right click on it. You can stretch to a boundary. Let's say you can stretch this to a boundary. Let's say you want it to stop somewhere. You click it. Now it has shifted to that boundary you want it to. Right click on it again, stretch to a boundary. Let's just say you want your axis to stop somewhere here. You drag it so it cuts it to that boundary conditions.